your host of Roster Rescue. And today I'm bringing in Jeremy, who is a big college draft guy that has his rankings and puts out threads. He's a great Twitter handle. Jeremy, how are we doing today? And where can everybody find you?
I'm doing good. It's a Sunday. I'm in Buffalo, so we got snow again. Thought it was over, but yeah, I'm doing all right. And you guys can find me on Twitter at PopesFFH. And I'm happy to be here. It's gonna be a blast talking some
Yeah,
rookie
Jeremy
running
on
backs.
Twitter,
So
guys. Sorry, Jeremy on Twitter puts out these like threads of like 30 different YouTube clips on just a certain player. So if you want to find out anything on, say, like Kenneth Walker, he has a thread where he has all the YouTube clips and the definition of what he's looking for. So he's going to tell you that look at the elusiveness of Kenneth Walker on this play because he jukes a linebacker up out of his shoes, or look at the power that you don't think he does have. Look at him run through this linebacker. So the threads I can get lost into, Jeremy. I know you put some time into those, so I want to pat you on the back right there. That's worth a follow right there just on following your threads.
I appreciate that. The kind words, they resonate deep, and I get lost myself. That's the thing. Sometimes I'm going through and I'm watching this, and I'll have like all these cut up clips. I'll have like 35 of them, and I'm like, oh, I can't put that many on. Twitter yells at me, so I have to find a select few that I
Oh,
can
I get
actually
lost, man.
put
I'll
in
be
there.
looking through it, and that's how I found you. I was like, man, I got to have this guy on the show. He knows because I was feeling a lot of the points that you were making, but I'm like, wow, I just spent like 15 minutes on my phone on one post on Twitter, but it was legit, and I learned something. So, like I said,
Yeah.
if it's worth anything to you on Twitter, give Jeremy a follow. He was well worth it, and you will be more knowledgeable for it. So today we're talking the running back class of the 22 NFL draft class. Me and Jeremy, I have my rankings. I'm going to be posting a little bit. We're going to be talking about Jeremy's rankings, and we're going to go through the class as a whole. So we're going to focus just in on the running backs today. We're going to give some of their dynasty values and hopefully a couple sleepers. I don't know if Jeremy's going to hold out on us or not, but I definitely have a few of mine, and I can't wait to dig deep into this draft class. So Jeremy, as a far in a vacuum, what do you really think about this running back class? Say, would you give it a grade of a B, a B minus, an A? What do you think of this class as a whole?
I would probably say you're looking at like a B minus. I think that there are a few of that top tier type kind of guys. You really only have a couple of them, two, you could argue three. And then after that, you get into a lot of these guys that could carve out independent roles, but not many that I think are going to lead that or has that potential to be a lead guy for an NFL team. We do see that the NFL is kind of rolled to that running back by committee style. So a lot of these guys, I think, can find a role. I just don't think you're going to get it's not going to be like the 2020 class where you get J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, JT, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, all these guys that have real good potential. It's not like filled like that. It's more similar to last year's class, but I think the middle portion, like the meteor portion of the class, is a little bit better than last year's. So if that helps.
I agree with that 100%. I think it's deeper than last year's class where it completely fell off after the top three. Even though Elijah Mitchell did emerge last year as a fantasy option, I don't know if it's because he was an elite talent. I think it was because he was on an elite coordinator with Shanahan, who can call a play better than anybody in the NFL. And every running back that has landed any sort of volume for the San Francisco 49ers under Kyle Shanahan has produced. So I liked Elijah Mitchell. I'm not going to call him a great talent. It fell off after the top three. I believe, I think, I forget who I had as my four. It was bad because
Mine was Kylan Hill, so RIP.
Kylan Hill. Yeah, he fell to the sixth round. He was a guy I liked but didn't love. Who did I have? Who went to Detroit? I can't think of it from Oregon State. Jamar Jefferson.
Yeah, Jamar
I
Jefferson.
think he was my four, and it was like someone has to be ranked number four. I was not into Trey Sermon or Stevenson, even though Stevenson he hit a couple games this year, but it's in New England. I'm not too excited.
Yeah.
They're going to draft another running back this year. So I'm with you. I think it's about a B minus. The top guys, there's a definite top 3 tier 1 guys that are above the rest. And it's kind of that's similar as last year, but I don't know if you have as the top end talent. 2 of these guys aren't going in the first round like ETN and Najee went last year. Javante, everybody's excited about him with Russell Wilson in Denver this year. So I don't know if you're going to get those landing spots, and I don't know if the talent's as high. I don't know if the ceiling is as high on an Isaiah Spiller, Brees Hall, Kenneth Walker as it is on those 3 guys. But after that, you get a much deeper running back class than the 2021 class. It's not 2020. You're right. You're not getting the studs of that class. Plus, they had depth. But there's 5, 6, 7, 8 guys I'm really excited about. And if they end up in the right spot when we go through my ranking, they're guys that could be legit dynasty options. So the thing about it is like it's like I feel really bad for a lot of second string and third string running backs because a lot of Jag running backs that were in the NFL last year, they're going to get kind of booted out of the way by these Jag rookie running backs because you're going to see a lot of guys drafted between third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round. You're going to see a lot of guys drafted that you're like, that team doesn't need a running back, but they're going to get on some rosters and they're going to get a chance at some point, either because of an injury, because of somebody struggling, because of a holdout, regardless, somebody hitting their girlfriend, who knows? Running backs can get volume out of nowhere, and we've seen people produce with it, and it's pretty exciting. So before I bust out my rankings, because I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the tier 1 guys because we know who they are. I want to talk Jeremy. I want to talk to Jeremy about some of the other guys that I'm talking about with the depth of this class. How do you rank the top 3? The Kenneth Walker, the Brees Hall, and the Isaiah Spiller. How do you rank that tier 1 to 3?
For me, it's almost like it's a split tier. I'm going to put them all in a tier, but for me, it's Brees Hall is number 1. But he's kind of alone for me. I think he's the lone guy that could go in the first round. He does have his faults. He's not a perfect prospect by any means. But the 4.3 was really nice to see at, or 4.4. I don't remember exactly where he fell into after the time came out. But the combine was good for Brees Hall, which only helped to prove what we saw on film, the 3 years, 1,000 yards each season. Like, it kind of just reassured you that there is talent there. It wasn't just because he was at Iowa State and they just run the ball all the time. So that was nice to see. So I really am in on Brees Hall. I think his size is great at 6'1", 220. Like he has everything you want as an NFL running back. And then for me, I'm leaning at a little bit Kenneth Walker over Isaiah Spiller. Walker hasn't given you that receiving profile, but I think he's just a far better runner than Isaiah Spiller. So they're kind of like a 2A, 2B kind of thing going on there for me. But so I wouldn't fault you to take Spiller over Walker, but that's just kind of where I sit.
Are you a little disappointed that Spiller did not participate like in the 40-yard dash at the combine and everything like that?
Not really. To me, so for me, the 40 kind of just like, I take stock in it. You have to, because the NFL uses it as a benchmark anyways. But for me, the 40 doesn't necessarily prove a ton for me. It just proves that they can run really fast if they were a track athlete. So I want to see it on film, and that it's almost a reassurance. So the 40 kind of gives you that reassurance that, oh yeah, okay, he runs away from people. This is why. So for me, I didn't need to see that from any of these guys totally. You can see it on film. Like you can see, okay, Brees Hall doesn't necessarily have that speed, but then he ran a 4.4. So now you got to go back and look, okay, so why can he run a 4.4, but he looks so slow on field? Like, is he processing? Is he not processing fast enough? Is he just not quick? Like, where do we see that fault? Because there was always a knock on him that he didn't have that speed that he showed us. And then you got to go back. Okay, yeah, he dropped weight. That helps him. So I don't necessarily took a ton of stock in the 40. So for me, with Isaiah Spiller not doing it, it didn't really knock him any further than what he was already for me.
Yeah, the thing with Spiller is everybody was expecting a gigantic 2021 season. and
Hmm.
it never really happened because he was sharing a lot of time with Devin A. Chain, who is an amazing prospect, who I love in the 2023 class, which is really deep. If you want to talk about an A running back class, it's going to be next year's class.
Hmm.
So A. Chain he's a remarkable talent, and Spiller and him were almost 50-50 at the end of the year. It was a little alarming, but when I look back at the 21 film, Isaiah Spiller was everything he was supposed to be. He was everything advertised, and he has the size and he has the lateral quickness. And I think he's going to end up being my RB1. He's been my RB1 the whole time, and I had to take notice of Brees Hall in how he tore the combine up. But like you said, he doesn't play for sub 4.4. I think his
Hmm.
time was a 4.38. First of all, those combine numbers were dog shit. I mean, they really were. They were all over the
Yeah,
place.
it was so misleading. Like, why did they have somebody with such an unofficial time that was? I mean, I don't know how they break down the official time. Maybe it took longer, so they wanted like a live time on there to have. But like, it was crazy how far they were off. They were off by like 0.5 of a second. I'm like,
Yeah.
geez.
I mean, and we're watching Kenneth Walker right now, and he was sub 4.4 too, which I mean, he shows a lot more speed on tape than Brees Hall does. But we're talking sub 4.4 is elite of the elite, fastest guys in the NFL. And at 210 pounds, I'm just like Kenneth Walker. Like we're seeing some looseness right here, but he's not a 4.3 guy. It's just I'm not going to get too far into it, but I think they're complete dog shit. But Spiller to me has been my one, and I haven't moved him off that spot. Now, Kenneth Walker was the riser of this tier. I mean, he came out of nowhere from Wake Forest, and he, I mean, just dominated from the first snap against Northwestern for Michigan State in 21. I mean, it was a pleasure to watch every Michigan State game because he was amazing. He was great. I'm glad he bolted. He came to the NFL because he was getting a lot of maybe a little too many carries. He's getting a heavy workload last year. And at 210, I mean, he looks smooth. He's my RB2. Brees Hall stayed my RB3. I didn't change anything after the combine, but the vertical jump was pretty damn impressive for Brees at 40 inches. Like that, that shows lower body strength. He has nice vision. He can run through. He's just really nice. I don't know if Brees Hall does anything great. I mean, I called
Yeah,
him. I get a lot of flack. I called him kind of a jag before the season started. I've come back a little bit from that because of the elite numbers he put up at the combine, but the tape, going just to the tape, I don't know if he does anything great, but he does everything well.
yeah, and I think you can argue that there's definitely some issues with him as far as whether it's trusting his own abilities or necessarily his processing. Sometimes he just plays slow. Like he doesn't really hit holes very fast or hard. He kind of just like it's almost like he's second guessing himself a little bit, which is a touch concerning. I won't lie, but I don't know. I can't put Kenneth Walker ahead of him on the basis of it was a 1 year thing at Michigan State. He fit the system well. They were blocking well. You see a lot of his runs. Like he does make plays in the backfield where this play was blown up and then he gets good yardage. But it just kind of seems like a lot of it was good blocking. He hit holes well. He hits it fast, and he was running reckless. And that was what really helped him. I think that he just was out there playing football, and he just fell into a perfect system in Michigan State. If he falls in the right system in the NFL, Kenneth Walker definitely is going to be a huge fantasy asset. For me, Isaiah Spiller, I want to see, like you said, I just want to see more. I wanted to see more than what he gave us. I know that it was a split backfield and everything, but Isaiah Spiller has all the tools. That's what I mean. All three of these guys, it's going to be big landing spots. I just think that Brees Hall is going to get the draft capital. It's going to kind of push him up there and be that top guy. I don't know. They're all pretty equal, honestly, if you really want to break it down.
They are,
So,
and I've thought about switching or moving and different schemes. I'm glad that you brought that up. Kenneth Walker might fit one scheme better than Brees Hall, or Isaiah Spiller might fit another one better than Kenneth Walker. I think it could be a little scheme dependent. I see. I think Isaiah Spiller has the most potential of the class. I don't think we've seen a finished product from Isaiah Spiller. I think the ceiling's the highest. So If it's very close, I'm always going to lean towards the ceiling play, and that's my way of deciphering through it. But I'm not going to go huge into Isaiah Spiller versus Brees Hall, even though I have Spiller 1, Hall 3. I mean, they're very close. So you're just kind of you're waiting for the landing spots. If we're talking dynasty, we're waiting for the. It's not an absolute. Like Isaiah Spiller's not going to be my dynasty RB rookie 1, no matter what, because of landing spots and the opportunity that some of these guys can get going to an elite offense.
Yeah, and when you look at dynasty landing spots, if you want to get particular, so for me, I never jump tiers. So you got that tier 1. I will adjust those 3 based on a landing spot because they're all kind of the same player to me as far as a player grade goes. So I'll keep these guys in this order until we see a landing spot. But Kenneth Walker could jump Brees Hall just based on a pure fact of a landing spot because he's within that tier. But I'm not going to take a guy like Damian Pierce, who's in a pretty low tier for me, and bring him to the top because he lands in Atlanta. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Right.
for me, the landing spots do matter, not a ton, but they will adjust my inner tier kind of rankings.
I like it. All right, I'm gonna pull up my ranks real quick, and well, I'm gonna try to. Sorry about that.
Technical difficulties.
So, and then I'm gonna go through it, and I do have them tiered out, and I have my top 30. And you could go a little deeper. There's some guys on this list. I've even someone how I don't have CJ Verdell in my top 30, and somebody was giving me a bunch of grief, like it was blasphemy. Like I was waiting for CJ Verdell to the show out for a very long time here. So if you want to talk about CJ Verdell, I don't know. Are you a CJ Verdell fan? Before we get too far into it,
I was. It was I didn't even know he declared at one point. Like I was looking everywhere. I thought he was returning, and then like I saw he was at the combine, and I'm like, I thought he was going back, and like now he's out, and I'm like, it was all like this whole offseason leading up so far. I've just kind of been like, is he declared? Is he not? I couldn't find anywhere that said he declared ultimately. And I really liked CJ Verdell. The injury really killed it for him this last season. But like the year before, I was all in. Like CJ Verdell screams Elijah Mitchell again, like on the basis of if he lands in San Francisco, I would love it. But he's not going to get any draft capital to like really rise him up there. But he would maybe be in my top 30. Maybe right near the end, though, for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, what is he? 185 pounds, and he's a guy that had a huge. I think 2019. I mean, we're going back almost 3 seasons, and by the end of last year, he wasn't. He got pushed to the back for was it Travis Dye, who ended up actually transferring to USC. So, and he's like they were like the exact same backs. They were like 5'9", 5'10", 185 pounds, quick, but.
Yeah, CJ Verdell had some more size. I don't know if he got down. I know he was up. Oh, he was over 200. That was his big draw because he was so fast. But
we've seen those college heights weights. They can be deceiving sometimes. So
Wan'Dale Robinson still burns me. Even in my thread, I messed it up. I thought I changed it in my database, and I'm like, yeah, he's 5'11". I was like, I thought he came in shorter. And then like I got like 30,
probably be a round pick.
Yeah, I got like 30 comments. He's like 5'8", God, and I was like, all right. I know that, I guess.
Yeah, the Napoleon Dynamite. He's 5'8", dumbass.
Yeah, I'm like, my bad. You're right.
So, to me, all right, I was just getting into this with another one of my buddies on the pod. The tier 2 is very muddied, and we were going back and forth on who we had in it, and he had very different players than I did. But to me, the RB4 after the top 3, and I will pound on the table, is Rachaad White. In pre-combine, it was Kyren Williams, and you see, I moved Kyren Williams down from 4 to 7, and Kyren the athletic profile at his size, it's gonna be really hard. He's gonna be Myles Gaskin now. If he jumped 37 to 38 inches, showed some explosion, and ran a 4.5 flat, then I think he could possibly be something more. But with that athleticism and his size. I mean, I love his game, but Kyron had to fall for me.
I saw a comp on Twitter from somebody else. This wasn't my own, and I don't know how I didn't think of this being a Bills fan and living in Buffalo. But I saw someone comp him to Devin Singletary, and that's probably exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean,
They both had
there's
really good college profiles, and like they had it on there. I don't remember who it was, and I apologize, but like the they had the combine numbers, like their heights and everything like that. Literally, they're like the identical player. One just played at Florida International, and one was at Notre Dame.
Yeah. So, to me, who's your number 4? Who's after the top tier? Because I'm going to pound on the table is Rachaad White, the size, the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run it. He averaged 9 yards per carry in 2020. I see him being multidimensional, sorry. And he doesn't have a lot of wear on those tires. I think he's going to come in fresh and ready to roll in the NFL. Who's your number 4?
Yeah, for me, 4 sitting is Rachaad White as well. Right now, I really like what he has. He has good size. It's 6'2", 215. I think he came in at the combine, and like you said, he's really good out of the backfield. He's definitely not a perfect prospect. He's not anything that's overly like, yes, he's gonna be great. But there's a lot of underlying talent skills there. He's explosive. He has the hands. He has the breakaway speed as well. He just kind of does a lot of things well. He's very inconsistent at times. He's going to need some good coaching, but I agree. I think Rachaad White is great. He's a little old. He's kind of up there in age, but so was Najee last year. So I just think
is he 20? Is he 23 right now?
I do believe so. Yes.
I know he's going to be 23 by the time the season starts.
Yeah.
And you don't love that. Yeah, you want him to be 20 years old, but I don't hate it. Like the running backs he's going to be done by 30 anyway. So, he's going to get done a year. Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires. He was a transfer before the 2020 season. They played like 4 games in the Pac-12 last year, and then he played a full season this year. So he really only has a year and a half of actual like big production. I'm not going to take the JUCO volume against him because he's playing against probably like 200-pound linebackers and 250-pound defensive tackles. Like I don't think he's was taking the same beating that you're going to take in the Pac-12 or in the SEC or any of the other conferences. So I'm not going to hold that so much against him. He's 23 years old. I think he's going to be ready to go, and he has a sophisticated style of play that translates into the NFL, and that's getting out on a linebacker and creating separation for easy receptions. And that's how to get on the field as a tier 2 running back. Like all these tier 2 guys for me, they have a niche. Like they're going to be either receiving back or you're going to have Kevin Harris, who is going to be that pounder that is just going to, be a 2-down back. He's not going to play on third downs when you have a James Cook who is probably primarily going to play on third downs because he's elite in the pass game, but he only weighs 199 pounds. So that's kind of what my tier 2 is. Tier 1 is guys that can do it all. They can be 3-down backs. They're really good up the middle. They can play on third downs and they can catch the ball. Even though Kenneth Walker hasn't had the production, I believe he can go out there and at least catch some dump down passes. So I'm not gonna hold Michigan State and Wake Forest not throwing it to him against him until I just see him completely dropping passes or just whiffing on some of his pass protection responsibilities. So after Rachaad White, who would be in your number 5 slot? Because it is a big mystery to me because Rachaad White, I guess he could be maybe not in tier 1, but I think there's a big gap between him and the next back for me.
Yeah, I've been really torn. I've definitely altered these a lot. Right now I'm rolling with Jashawn Corbin out of Florida State. I really like what he brings. He did come in way shorter than what he was listed at. He's only 5'11", 200 pounds at the combine, 202 to be exact. But I just like what he brings. I think he's a little raw. He's going to need some help and some coaching. But he has a lot of talent that I like. He's pretty quick. He's fairly elusive. He has good speed. He can catch the ball as well. I just feel like I get a lot of like he doesn't have the elite athleticism and talent that Cam Akers had, but it was kind of the same feel. Like I feel like he was just forgot about because he's in Florida State, and the tape was really good. It popped off for me, and I'm just kind of in under Sean Corbin. It's a little bit of like I guess a bias just because like I really like what he brought to it. But he's just does everything well. Like he sets up blocks well. Like he reads the defense pretty good. And even then, once he's in the second level, he kind of has that like subtle move to him that allows him to stay at full speed. He gives him like a little head bob, but he loses defenders that way, and they just go and they just run by him, or it's a whiff, and it's just something you like to see. Like I like to see a subtle movement that they can make a defender miss, but they can still stay at full speed. I don't want a guy who's got to stop, kind of like give him a full wiggle and then pick back up unless they have like elite acceleration, which you see in some people, like a Kamara does that, where he can literally stop on a dime and then pick back right up. Where these guys that don't have that elite skill, I want to be able to see them have an ability to use a subtle move at full speed where they can lose a guy and then keep on going. So he's smooth, and I just like the tape, and that's where I'm at with him.
I like it. That's out on a limb a little bit, but I love the player. I really do. I wish there was more tape, Jeremy. I wish there was more tape of Corbin because he has a lot of those traits that Travis Etienne had last year. I think he was like a B plus version of Travis Etienne. He was listed way off at Florida State. I mean, I think they had listed him at like 219 at one time or 215 or something like that. And
he was listed 6 foot 215. So he came in like he was 5'11", 202. So he's that's almost 20 pounds lighter.
And he was the one guy I really wanted to watch run at the combine because he was the one, if he ran a 4.3, I would actually believe it. I'm sorry, Reese. I'm sorry, man. Corbin's one of those guys that you do not see him getting caught from behind. He's raw, and I think he has as much upside as anybody in this class. He's the one guy I would worry about in pass protection, and he didn't show too much in his receiving route tree at time. And then like at the end of the year, they weren't using him as much. They were using like a rotation. Like he got heavy volume one game, the next game he got like 6 carries. So we didn't
That's
see
what
it
I mean.
completely. It was a mystery of why they weren't feeding him the ball because, I mean, week 1 against Notre Dame was probably the best tape he put out all season. And he looked like an elite player on the field against the highest of competition that he probably played the entire season. And it was his best game. So I like to grade players on usually how they play against their best competition. And Corbin played great against Notre Dame. He's a guy, I don't fault you. I have him as my number 11th running back, start of tier 3, and I moved Zamir White ahead of him just because Zamir showed a little bit more burst than I thought. But I'm not going to fault anybody like that. I think Corbin has a higher upside. Get this guy on a roster, like he could be the Elijah. I mean, I feel like we keep saying he could be the Elijah Mitchell. Like if you had him in that San Francisco system, it could be scary because his comp for me was Mostert. Like if Mostert didn't have spaghetti string ACLs, like that, Mostert could be he could be putting up elite fantasy stats, and that's who Corbin really reminded me of.
I'd like to see him in a spot that he can get used as a 3-down back. I think that could be great. I think he has that ability. That's why I have him this much higher. I think he can be used as a 3-down back if he gets the opportunity. It's just going to be really landing spot dependent for me. He might fall to 8 or 9 come if he gets buried. You know, I mean, if he's buried, I mean, I don't see him getting that opportunity. But if he lands in a spot like maybe with the Jets, I mean, he could possibly deal with Michael Carter. You could see him in Atlanta if they decide to wait and draft somebody late. Miami, you know, like these places that there are backs there, but he could get an opportunity. He's going to go later where he's going to get that chance, I think, to land on a team that might be a little bit better and get a chance to have an opportunity to produce.
I mean, I can't wait to see where he lands because he could be that guy. He could be the one that comes out of nowhere and ends up being one of the best backs in this class because the talent's sky high for him.
Tennessee would be crazy to me. I think that they could be in the market for a running back in this class, and I feel like it's going to be somebody in this range. he would offer an ability for them to move on from Derrick Henry in a couple of years, or a year or two, and he
He'd
could
be a
also
great
be used in
compliment
the.
because
He could be a
he
good
would fit
compliment.
great
Yeah,
in that system.
that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? He could work as a compliment now, and then once Henry does move on, you now have him kind of get to that opportunity to plug in.
So I want to bring up a player he's not as big as Derrick Henry, but he's a guy that runs kind of like Derrick Henry, and it's going to be Kevin Harris from South Carolina. I don't know if
Oh, I'm
I'm
here for
bullish on
all of
him.
it.
I don't think I'm crazy for having him my RB6, and I don't see him that high on almost anybody's list. And it's really close, like him or James Cook. Like I went back and forth of who is the better NFL prospect. Like again, these are not my fantasy or dynasty rankings or anything like this. This is just my pre-draft rankings. Like I am an NFL GM or a scout. These are the guys I think that fit and translate best into the NFL. And Kevin Harris has a spot. We're talking the guy who led the SEC in rushing in 2020 for a abysmal pass offense. South Carolina was not scaring anybody with that pass offense, and he led the league in rushing. And we're talking, Zamir White, Tank Bigsby, all the Alabama players, like all these other guys that were there. Isaiah Spiller, he led the whole SEC in rushing on a terrible offense. I mean, we're talking about landing spots on some of these rookies, and if they land in the wrong spot, it's going to be bad. This guy had over 1,200 yards rushing. He put on really good tape against the highest of competition, and I was waiting for an explosion in 21, kind of like Isaiah Spiller, and it didn't quite happen. I think he was nicked up. He was banged up a little bit. But what I love about Kevin, and I came back to him a little bit, it's the last game of the season against North Carolina in the bowl game. This dude destroyed them. These safeties and linebackers wanted nothing to do with Kevin Harris in that bowl game from North Carolina. Shame on you, but I don't blame you. He didn't run at the combine, but he did jump 40 inches. He shows explosion in that lower body. He weighed a little. I forget what he weighed. Do you remember what he weighed at the combine? I'd have to bring it up. I think it was in the low 20s. I thought it was a pretty good
Yeah, I
weight
have
for him.
220 solid.
220. I mean, he looks a little bigger than that, but he like of like a B version of Nick Chubb without the lateral quickness. But when he gets his shoulder pads behind himself, he's running through linebackers. And he caught a pass here. He showed a little bit of his receiving game. I mean, he has some soft hands. He's not going to play too much on third downs, but I think he could be an elite 2 down back in this league in the right system if he gets the volume. What do you think about Kevin Harris?
It's refreshing to hear somebody who I can talk to and we can be friends about it. Nobody likes Kevin Harris, and I'm not 100% sure why. I would echo everything you said, and I don't want to sound too much like an echo chamber, but it's exactly the same thing. I think everything that you said nails it on the head there. But yeah, he was definitely injured because I reached out to a lot of people. Well, I didn't reach out, but I just put out a question on Twitter of like, I don't know what happened to him in 2021. Like in 2020, like he was, like you said, like he was just so explosive and he looked great. Like when I was doing my scouting with Debo and like Cy Smith, like he was popping off the screen. And I'm like, geez, this kid can really play. Like, how come nobody's talking about him? And then 2021 happened. He had a back injury in between 2020 and 2021 that I guess he had surgery on. So he really wasn't like fully healthy come the start of this season. So it's kind of what led him to not looking as great, is what I've found out so far. And like you said, though, a lot of people though said the same thing. Like that last game and the bowl game, like that was Kevin Harris. That's who you're getting when he's healthy. So for me, I'm all in. I think he can be a 3 down back. I think he can do enough on the receiving game. I mean, he hasn't shown like a crazy route tree, but in today's NFL, I mean, not these NFL running backs, they are running some complex routes, but a lot of them, if you can catch a swing pass and an angle route and some simple wheel routes, like you're going to be fine. A lot of these NFL teams can use that. We see Devin Singletary get used like that here in Buffalo, or like Myles Gaskin isn't running complex routes. Like they don't need to be crazy. If they can catch a football and not drop it and get yardage after that, you can be a receiving back in the NFL.
I mean, here he is right now against Florida,
Yeah.
and this is when he jumped on my radar. He got out of the backfield, he got on a linebacker, and he caught the ball. What else do you really want? And that was the game that he jumped out.
Yeah.
and was like, wow, this is a dude. This is a
Yeah.
real guy. I'm excited about him in this 21 class. And then
I
21, I got, I fell into the, oh, where's the stats? Where's the stats? And I had him down my list. He was like my RB10 or my RB9. And then I'm rewatching the North Carolina game, and I'm like, all right, he's in my top 6, and he's not coming out of it. He's not going lower. Nobody's going to jump him because nobody is going to be as physical as he is, and nobody's going to be as good in between the tackles on first and second downs. And like I said, my tier 2 is a guy. It's more guys that with the niches where
mhm.
they're their receiver or they're a power back. You don't get a lot of combination of both. But guess what? He is an elite power back. Like you, NFL linebackers are going to know who Kevin Harris is. I promise you that.
Yeah. And even that, you saw it just a little bit back on a couple of those clips. I mean, running away from Vanderbilt there. I think it was Vanderbilt. But like he has the speed to break the big runs as well. I mean, he's not gonna like blow you away probably with speed, but he has the ability, you know.
He
I
has
just
deceiving feet. Like he
yeah.
has a little quicker feet than it sometimes appears, and
Even like right there, like that, just like he caught the edge. Like if he's
he caught the
confident
edge,
enough,
and
you
that's
know,
against
and he
LSU. Those are all 4-star recruits. So
yeah.
he's not just a he. I think he's going to be what people wanted Zach Moss to be for your team.
Yeah. I could see that. Something similar to that.
And if
He's bursty, you know. He gets that edge if he's confident in the hole that he finds. I mean, he has enough speed to kind of like, and he's deceiving. You know, he has that deceiving like. You kind of linebackers take the wrong angle because he is so big, and he just kind of has that little bit of that deceiving burst acceleration that gets him past him.
I love it. So we're both in on Kevin Harris. Where is he at in your actual rankings?
I have him at 7. But he's in that same tier for me. It's like it's White, Corbin. I have Tyler Goodson ahead of Harris, and then that's kind of where he hits.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about Tyler Goodson before I pull up the rest of my rankings. What do you like about him? Because he's not currently in my tier 2, or he's in a farther down tier. I think I have him about RB19. I think so. He's a guy that he doesn't have great size. He had a nice combine. He showed a little bit more speed than I liked. I think of him as just a guy. You might have to sell him on me a little bit.
Yeah, so for me, for Tyler Goodson, I think he is a little underweight. He didn't get to that 200-pound threshold, so I'm still very torn with Tyler Goodson. I kind of have him up there just because he has a lot of traits that you can use. Like he's a good pass catcher. He's quick. He's just very bursty and quick. You see that on tape, I think, personally. And his explosiveness is great. He can change speed pretty quickly. So with this, and well as his vision, it allowed him to actually excel. He had the opportunity to finally get that chance at Iowa this year. So he finally, just for me, it was the speed, the vision, the pass catching ability, and his contact balance was pretty good as well. So I just think when I'm looking at guys here in this tier, it's kind of like, okay, what can they bring? And I just like that he could become a third down back strictly, but he also has that kind of ability to fill in and be a guy that could see a couple weeks of like top end production if the lead guy goes down.
Yeah, you get everything out of his, what he weighed, 198. You get
Yeah.
everything out of him. You do. And I liked his feet. I thought he moved to the side really well. His lateral agility, I thought was one of the better running backs in this class. I'm a little bit worried about his overall size. You saw a little bit of the receiving. I don't know if you're going to, obviously you're not comparing him to CMC. I don't know if he's going to be that type of guy. I don't know if he does enough things really good. I think he does a lot of things well, and with the size, I think of his maybe he could be like a B version Kenneth Walker, a little smaller. I think they match up pretty well. I think I like so many backs. I like Goodson, but I have him at like RB19. So I like after the top 4 guys for me, or even 4 or 5. I mean, between 7 and like 20 of this running back class, like they have very similar grades. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'll bring my rankings back up, and I mean it's really close. So, I mean, we can go from
I,
Kyron Williams, who completely, like I've said it, he shit the bed at the combine. He wasn't in that 200-pound range. He jumped like 32 inches. He's not showing the lower body strength, even though his tape is so good. He looks explosive on tape, but running in the 4.6s, it's just like, man, it doesn't profile well. I have to come off him a little bit. Jerome Ford, we were hoping he was going to be a 4.4 guy. He was a 4.6 guy on a fast track when we were thinking, hey, everybody's running way faster. A fast guy ran a little bit of a slower time. He plays faster in 4.6, but he seems like a very straight line guy. I don't see him. You don't see many cutbacks. You don't see the vision. If the hole's there, he is all the burst you want in a running back at like 209 pounds. He was listed a little bit bigger at Cincinnati. So we can go through all these running backs and kind of pick them apart a little bit. And then you can go down to the Tyler Goodson and even Hassan Haskins. He has a little bit of juice. He has really nice size. I have him at RB23. Is there that much difference between him and Jerome Ford? I mean, it's not really. It's going to be kind of landing spots who the NFL thinks is going to fit better in their exact system. But NFL team ends up drafting these guys, and are they going to actually get a chance to shine? So, a guy I want to bring up real quick in my tier 2 at the end of it that you don't hear a lot of hype on, but is a very multi-dimensional guy. It's Zonovan Knight. Where does he lay on your rankings?
So I am not as in on Zonovan Knight. But he's another guy that I've just been back and forth on. Like, there's just, like you said, literally, like, you could take, mine's kind of the same. The tier 2 that you have there, the 3 and the 4, like, they're really the same almost. Like, you have to break them up, kind of trying to figure out how. But I've bounced Zonovan Knight from tier 2 to 3. I've bounced him from tier 3 to 4. I've bounced these guys all around leading up to it. But Zonovan Knight definitely brings a lot of versatility, like you said, to the table. It was not highly productive if you're going to plug him into any analytical or statistical kind of formula. He's not going to come out very well. He never even broke 1,000 yards at NC State, but he does have good burst. He isn't super powerful, but he has enough, if you get what I'm saying with that. And he has good hands out of the backfield. So I could see where he kind of has that ability to be a multifaceted kind of guy. But I see him more as like a career backup type of guy. I just don't know if he'll ever really push past anybody. But I could see in a decent landing spot where he could have some plug-in value / maybe if he gets used in like a running back by committee. I don't see it totally with Savannah and Knight.
Yeah, he was sharing the workload, much like Isaiah Spiller this season. So he was a guy high on a lot of people's rankings, including my own. I think I had him coming into the season as my RB6, I believe, 5, 6, 7 range. And I was like, oh, I was waiting for a big season. Now he had some great highlights, but he was sharing with Ricky Pearson's, and he never got a huge workload. He's a kick returner. So I add that into my equation for the NFL draft. A really good kick returner. I think he led the ACC the last 2 years. He had a big 100-yard kickoff return against Miami in 2020. So he showed me everything I needed to know about his long speed. Even though he was in the 4.6s, he has nice size. He can get out of the backfield. He's a very well-rounded player who I think could maybe surprise people with some of his draft capital. He could go in round 3 above maybe some of these other guys that everybody figures is going to go higher than him. I think he has a bright future in the NFL. Maybe we haven't seen the best of him because we haven't seen the high workload, and I just don't know if he's ever going to be that prototypical, 250 plus touch guy. I think you hit that on the head. I think he can be in a committee and be very productive, maybe returning kicks his rookie season, maybe on third downs, maybe just here and there with another running back. So, and then if he gets the hot hand, we never know. He's a guy I'm excited about who, like I said, I would watch out. He could be the one that surprises you in this class that goes a little bit higher than a lot of people are talking about. So that basically ends my tier 2. We talked about Corbin. Keontae Ingram is another guy that he flashes sometimes like a 5-star player, and then he's kind of inconsistent. He lies kind of in the middle for me. I think he has some high upside, but I just don't know. I mean, he has really big size. He has the best size in this class, and he's a very twitchy player who can make some guys look really silly at times, but he's not consistent and doesn't run behind his pads. What do you think about Keontae Ingram?
All right, so Keontae Ingram to me is just he's far down on my list. I do like what he flashes, like you said. There are times that he looks like, oh wow, you should be an RB 3 or 4 in this tier, or but he's very inconsistent, like you said. But he reminds me a little bit of Trey Sermon, and I'm getting some Trey Sermon vibes from him. He is twitchy, but he's also very wild. Like when he runs, he is very flaily, something that Trey Sermon had as well, where like he's not running tight and compact. He's kind of got a lot of extra movements that he doesn't need to have. But I definitely see with his size and he is actually a pretty good pass blocker. So I could see with his size and the pass blocking, and he does have good hands, that he will go a little bit higher than I expect him to, and could actually probably carve a rollout depending on where he lands.
No, I get that. I think he'll go round 4. I think he'll get drafted because of his size, because of what he can do, and he's shown it in the past game a little bit. Brian Robinson, actually, all right, I want to pick your brain on Tyler Beatty from Missouri, because he looked really good at the combine. I mean, just the way he moved. He's another guy, 194 pounds, but you get every ounce of that out of him on every single run. He is a very consistent player. If Keontae Ingram had the consistency of a Tyler Beatty, he would be a top 5 back in this class. What do you think about him? Where does he lay in your rankings? Because he's not the size guy, but he ran downhill like he had size. Plus, he can give you some of those third down plays and the elusiveness. What do we think about him?
I think his size is going to be his biggest fall. I don't know if the NFL is going to love his size. He reminds me a lot of like a Boston Scott, who's a similar size, similar style kind of player. I think that he could carve out a role as maybe a passing down back, but he's never going to get that, even though he plays to all of his 195, 94 pounds, however, whatever he came in totally strictly at the combine. I just don't think that he didn't get to 200. So it's like, that's kind of a knock for a lot of people in the fantasy world. Even the NFL, it's going to be tough for him to really carve a rollout. He reminds me a lot of Jared Patterson. He's very good. He has more passing work than Jared Patterson had last year, but the size is tough. You know, it's hard. Even if you're strong, even if you're a good runner, just everybody at the NFL is just bigger, stronger, faster, and it gets hard for some of these guys who are undersized. So I love him. I had him very high until he's in my 3rd tier at the top of it, and I think in the right situation he can become a fantasy asset or a good NFL player. I really think the size is going to hurt him.
It is, and if, like I said, if Keontae Ingram had his heart and his consistency, he'd be a top 5 back. But instead, he's 5'9", 194. But we've seen people produce at that size. It's few and far in between. I don't want to bring in outliers or anything like that, but we've seen it before. I'm not going to totally throw it out the window. I think he starts as just a scat back, a third down back, a change of pace back. But he reminds me a lot. You remember a couple years back, maybe a little bit farther than most people go back, Justin Forsett. I think that's a good comp for him. A shifty, undersized back that packs a punch, and sometimes when you always have leverage because of your size, it's hard. You're harder to take down, and you can surprise some people and some running backs and safeties and corners and stuff like that. I'm not calling him. I mean, he's in my tier 3, so it's because of size, but he does everything well, man. He does everything well with elite athleticism and lateral quickness. So it's like, man, how is he not going to be able to produce if he gets the work? And it's because of his size. I think in the right situation, you never know. And he's a guy I'm going to be picking in the 3rd round of these rookie drafts and sitting on, and you never know when you might, hit the golden ticket.
Yeah, for sure. This year, I think the third round is going to be filled with running backs for me as well. I think I'm just going to take a lot of shots on these guys. To me, they seem a little bit, the middle tier of the running back seems a little better than the middle tier of the wide receivers. So I'm going to be taking a lot of these guys, hoping for, like you said, that just them to get that chance. And maybe he's an outlier, Yeah, like the size has always been a key indicator. But like you said, he checks everything off as far as if he was literally as sad as this sounds, he only needs, for us to be like, oh, his size is perfect. He needs 3 more inches of height and 4 more pounds, and he would be like RB4. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And
Like, and it's literally that. That's the only thing for me that I can really knock a lot on Tyler Beatty for.
and it kind of is what it is. I love what you said about the wide receivers and the running backs. This year, it's the wide receivers. Everybody's talking. Everybody loves a wide receiver. It's very top heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like after 15, like it's kind of just complete dart throws. Where in years past we had some legit players, I think, into the 15s and the 20s that had some draft capital. I mean, some of these guys might get the. I'm not seeing it after 15, and we'll talk about wide receivers some other day. But I am seeing the middle pack of these running backs exactly like you said. I'm going to be picking wide receivers early in my dynasty drafts, and then in the third and fourth round, just throwing all my darts at the running backs because the wide receivers are all already going to be picked through, and it's nothing that I'm going to want to even do anything with. Where are we at on Pierre Strong? Because he's a guy I'm late to. I'm not going to lie. I started watching him about 3 weeks ago, and then the combine, he looked good at 207, great 40. He's jumping good. He's looking crisp, and I'm gonna have to go back and watch even more. But I mean, he was elite last year against subpar competition.
Yeah, so for me, I'm the same way that you are. I'll have to admit it and just eat it with it. But like, I wasn't in on Pierre Strong. I didn't even get to a breakdown on him. But both him and even Devontae Price, kind of like at the combine, they both kind of ran good 40 times and just tested pretty decent. Pierre Strong, much better, obviously. He's a guy that I got to revisit. I just didn't watch a lot of him, and just he's way down on my board just because I didn't really do my due diligence on him. And like you said, at South Dakota State, I was kind of like, okay, he's got good size, he's all right, but like he's playing against a lesser competition, so I just didn't really put much stock into it. But he definitely caught my eye. And once I finish going through like the rest of my positions, I'm gonna have to turn back to Pierre Strong for sure.
Yeah, he's interesting. I mean, he's a name that comes off the tongue, and it creates some interest for me because I've gone so deep in a lot of these guys. I mean, I've been watching Brian Robinson for 4 years. I've been watching all these guys for multiple years. And when I find a player, I'm like, okay, his size matches up. Okay, I get a check mark on the size. The speed matches up. Okay, I get a check mark on that. Okay, now how do I define this tape? Where does who is he playing against? Who are the linebackers that he's running past? Who are these safeties that can't catch up to him? And I have to take that into effect. What would that look like if he played for Missouri against the SEC competition? And he's interesting. I think he gets drafted. I think he goes day 3, and he's going to get probably every opportunity that any of these running backs 10 spots ahead of him are going to get. So I would not be surprised if Pierre Strong is one of these players that comes out of Division II and becomes a legit player, kind of like James Robinson, and outshines some of these Alabama guys and Baylor and BYU, whoever. He has every opportunity to, and I'm here for it. And I'd love to be throwing darts at him in the third round, depending on where he falls. So we're about almost an hour in. Jeremy, great show. Thank you so much for coming on. Anybody we haven't really brought up yet that is higher on your list, or you think we need to give a little recognition to?
Not really. I think the only guy I'm going to give a little shout out would be Jerron Ely. He's very undersized again, but he has a lot of talent. He pops on film, and I'm going to keep an eye on him. He's definitely interesting to me. So.
Yeah, I think he is strictly a receiving back. I don't know if he can.
And like he's like under 190 pounds, so I highly doubt he's going to ever be
Theo
much
Reddick
anything.
You remember like Theo Reddick had like
Yeah.
80 passes, but he had like 17 rushes. Like I don't see any rushing ability at the next
Uh,
level for him, and that's why he's a little bit farther down on my
yeah.
list. But
It's going to be a landing spot for sure. Like seeing him land in a spot like, I don't know, I've been using this a lot for receiving backs, but like Oakland or Las Vegas, like where he can get paired with Josh Jacobs and he's like what they wanted Kenyon Drake to be with new Josh McDaniels there. Or somewhere that maybe even like Buffalo, or Kansas City, somewhere that they pass heavy and they need a guy that can be like the receiving guy. Um, Maybe LA, like the Chargers, maybe could be interesting if he goes late there. Playing behind Eckler, kind of.
they draft a running back every year, so
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it could be interesting. He's just a guy that's on my board. I'm just kind of watching him. He's going to go real late in your rookie drafts and even possibly undrafted, depending on his landing spots. And he has a ton of talent, so I'm just gonna. I might throw a couple darts there. Just figured give him a little screen time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm not. I feel it. I'm not totally out on him because I think he is really good on the outside running routes, like almost like slot receiver good. He's built like a slot receiver. I just don't see him coming out of the backfield
Mhm.
and with any too much rushing ability. But he's got some juice. He did against really good competition. I mean, those were Alabama linebackers and Mississippi State linebackers he's going against, and you got to respect it. I just don't think he's big enough to tote the rock. I just don't. He's strictly going to have that role of just a receiver. So Jeremy, man, great show. We went through damn near every single running back in this class. We tiered them out. We went back and forth a little bit. We agreed on a lot, man. I was hoping maybe I didn't want to. You were like you said, I don't want to echo you or anything, but we agreed on a lot, which isn't always a bad thing, even though we're not going back and forth like Skip Bayless or anything like that. But this was a great show, man. Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on. And hopefully have you on, maybe talk wide receivers, quarterbacks later on in the year before the draft. But tell everybody at home, Jeremy, where they can find you one more time. And thanks again, buddy.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was an honor. I loved it, and I'll definitely come back if you want me back. And you guys, if you liked what I talked about, or you just want to check it out, it's at Popes FFH on Twitter. You can find pretty much all my rookie threads there. I'm going to be going through a lot of these guys. I'm working on wide receivers now, so if you are into wide receivers, this is your time. They'll be coming out every couple days because they do take some time, but that'll be up there. And if you are interested in any writing work, Sports Gambling Podcast Network and Yards Per.
Yeah, and I'm telling you guys, you'll get lost in those threads. You'll be flipping through your phone, watching the YouTube clips, listening
What's
to
even
the
nice about them
analysis.
too, like that I like too, is like, yeah, you're going to see that clip and you might not agree with what I have to say. You might be like, oh, this guy is just terrible. What is this kid thinking? But at least like you get it all in like one condensed area. You kind of get like, okay, this is what his stats are in college. I have some pro football stats in there. It's all there. So you can make your own assumption. You don't have to agree with me. You can disagree, but it's kind of just all there in one thing. Like you said, you can scroll through and instead of having to jump around to so many different places.
Yeah, you basically do all the work for me. I was like, all right, there's Jeremy. All right, here's the thread. Oh, I'm very interested in this player. And then here's all the clips I want to watch on him. And they're all right there for you. So you basically do all the work for everybody, which, hey, thanks, man, because you'll be smarter for following Jeremy. I promise. If you read one thread and look through it, you'll be smarter. You'll learn more about a player than it'll take you hours to look up all those YouTube clips. So, Jeremy, thanks a lot, man. Hope to talk to you soon.